We welcome you to another Sunday School lesson. Sunday School is a blessing and gift from God. Abraham in his old age sends his trusted servant to the city of Nahor in Mesopotamia, to find a wife for his son Isaac. When the servant arrived at a well outside the city, he prayed to God that he would reveal the woman that he wanted for Isaac's wife by her actions, and the Lord did just that. The woman's name was Rebekah. After being invited into Rebekah's home, the servant explained to Rebekah's brother Laban the reason for his being there. The servant then asked Laban and Bethuel, Rebekah's father, if he could take her back with him to be Isaac's wife. Laban and Bethuel agreed to send Rebekah back with Abraham's servant, after Rebekah expressed willingness to go back with the servant to marry Isaac. They blessed her and she took her female servants and went with Abraham's servant. They finally arrived in Canaan where Isaac married her. Our lesson begins with verse 19, which says, "This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac." Genesis 25 begins telling the generations of Isaac. After formally establishing that Abraham, the father of the Hebrew nation, fathered Isaac, Isaac's story and his family officially begins. Verse 20 says, "And Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah daughter of Bethuel the Aramean from Paddan Aram and sister of Laban the Aramean." We learn that Abraham's people are Aramean. At age 40, he married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, who was the youngest son of Abraham's brother Nahor. Their family lived in the region of Paddan Aram, the large geographic area where current-time Syria is located. Laban, brother of Rebekah, is mentioned for later. Jacob will travel to Paddan Aram and become associated with Rebekah's brother Laban. Verse 21 says, Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife, because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. Rebekah remained barren for a time, unable to have children. Isaac's mother, Sarah, remained childless until she was 90. We're not told how much time passed between Isaac's prayer and Rebekah's pregnancy, but we do learn that Isaac was 60 when his sons are eventually born. That means the couple remained childless for 20 years. The important thing to note is that Isaac took action. Prayer is action. He prayed to the Lord for his wife. God responded to Isaac's prayer. Helplessness is good for us when it causes us to seek God's strength. Although God is sovereign, He still wants us to bring our requests to Him in prayer. Verse 22 says, "The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, 'Why is this happening to me?' So she went to inquire of the Lord." Rebekah, formerly unable to have children, becomes pregnant after Isaac prays to the Lord for her. In fact, she is carrying the double blessing of twins. Rebekah likely doesn't know she is carrying twins, and her pregnancy doesn't appear to have felt especially blessed to her. Carrying two children at once is hard enough, but these unborn rivals seem particularly active. The twins are struggling against each other, a comment which makes more sense once we've seen all that will occur between them in the future. The kicking and writhing of the children in her womb grows to the extent that it worries Rebekah. Verse 23 says, "The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb and 2 peoples from within you will be separated, one people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." Rebekah, overwhelmed by the difficulty of her pregnancy, decides to approach the Lord to find out what is going on. She has no idea that there are actually 2 children in her womb. All she knows is that the turbulence she feels is not right. This is not a normal part of pregnancy. She receives a very specific prophecy given in the form of a poem. The prophecy may have seemed vague and unhelpful at this point in Rebekah's life, but it describes what is to come very clearly. Rebekah's two sons would become two peoples or nations. Their relationship would be marked from the beginning by conflict and division. One would be stronger, but the older one would become a slave or servant to the younger one. God chose the younger Jacob over Esau, contrary to what humans would do for reasons only he knows. Verse 24 says, "When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb." Since God answered Rebekah's prayer telling her that there were two nations in her womb, it's not clear whether she understood the Lord's words to mean that she would have twins. Whether she understood or not, when the time came for her to give birth, the Lord's word was confirmed, there were twins in her womb. These two children would eventually become two nations. Verse 25 says, "The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau." The first of Isaac's and Rebekah's twin boys emerges both red and hairy. Red was often associated with ruggedness, or manliness, and this child will grow into a stereotypically masculine figure. His hairiness, at least at birth, is so remarkable as to establish the name given to him, Esau, which suggests a hairy fellow. Esau's rugged appearance was indicative of the kind of life he would live, one that didn't appreciate life's higher things. Verse 26 says, "After this, his brother came out, with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob." Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The second twin is neither red nor hairy, compared to his twin, but he is also named for his first impression on his parents. He comes into the world grabbing his brother's heel, so this child is named Jacob, literally meaning he clutches the heel. Interestingly, though, and also important, Jacob can mean may God protect or reward, or unfortunately for Esau it can also mean usurper. Interestingly, in English at least, the phrase pulling my leg means joking with me, or lying to me. Jacob's future will be heavily influenced by acts of deception. We're now told that Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. These babies, as troubled as their relationship might be, were a direct answer to Isaac's prayer that his wife would become pregnant. Verse 27 says, "The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents." Added to the striking difference in the boys' appearance at birth was the difference in their interests. These differences became more evident as the boys matured. Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field. The ability to hunt not only meant an ability to provide for one's family, it was also an indirect sign of being proficient with weapons, making such a person a more capable warrior than other men. On the other hand, Jacob was a quiet man. He liked to stay home in the tents and, apparently, do indoor things. Most twins are very much alike, but in this case Esau and Jacob were very different. Some of this may have been due to the parenting styles of Isaac and Rebekah. Verse 28 says, "Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob." They bond with their parents accordingly. Isaac loves the manly son who brings home the game to eat. He's likely proud of the firstborn boy known as the great hunter. Rebekah, however, loves her quiet, stay-at-home second-born son. These unequal attachments of each parent makes love unequally distributed. Each parent clearly prefers one child over the other, and seemingly makes no secret of that fact. Parents should work at showing equal love to their children. They should teach their children how to show love to each other. Children should also be taught how to forgive. It will make a tremendous difference in their relationships. Verse 29 says, "Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. Jacob, the quiet, indoor brother, is cooking stew. It was made from the fruit of lentils, a pea-like plant, and grew where other plants would not. Lentils were widely used for both stew and crumbled into meal to use for bread. Esau returns from working in the field, perhaps on a hunting expedition, and he is exhausted. He came home from a day of hunting, and he was famished and felt like he was about to fall down from hunger. Verse 30 says, he said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That is why he was also called Edom. Esau saw the red stew and immediately begged his brother to give him some. His impatience was evident in the way he worded his request. Literally, he was saying, "Let me eat some of that red stuff." It appears that it didn't matter what kind of stew it was, since he didn't even give it a name. Undoubtedly, his mind was occupied with getting food as quickly as possible. The last part of this verse says that is why he was also called Edom. This seems to indicate that Esau received the nickname Edom, which means red, from this incident. Edom is similar to the word for red, which describes both the color of the stew and the color of Esau's hair or skin at his birth. The Edomites will come to be bitter, spiteful enemies of Israel over the centuries. Verse 31 says, Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." When Jacob saw his brother's problem, he saw a rare opportunity. So he demanded Esau to sell him his birthright. The birthright consisted of the special rights of the eldest son in the family. These included a double portion of the inheritance. Upon the father's death, the oldest son would become the head of the clan and serve as the family priest. To sell the power and privilege that came with the birthright for a bowl of stew would have been unthinkable. Both Jacob and Esau were familiar with the benefits of the birthright, and Jacob wanted it badly. He was a calculating schemer. Jacob understood Esau's character and knew that under the right circumstances, he would give up the birthright. Verse 32 says, "Look, I am about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" Clearly Esau was an alarmist for claiming he is at the point of death, which is doubtful. If he had valued the birthright, certainly he could have endured hunger a little longer. He valued only his senses of taste and smell. At this time, for Esau, the birthright was too vague and too spiritual and couldn't fill his stomach. Then Esau said, "And what profit shall this birthright do to me?" With this statement, Esau showed himself to be self-centered. He didn't see the birthright as a means of preserving spiritual values for future generations. He has both discounted the value of his birthright and inflated the value of immediately satisfying his appetite. He only cared about what the birthright could do for him. When he concluded that it had no value, he tossed the birthright aside. Verse 33 says, "But Jacob said, 'Swear to me first.' So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Esau has foolishly and hastily agreed to Jacob's condition. Now Jacob closes the deal by asking Esau to bind himself with an oath. Esau quickly swears the oath and sells his firstborn rights. Esau, of course, should have never sold his birthright. Selling it for food was even more appalling. On the other hand, Jacob should not have requested it, nor should he have accepted it as a price for food. He should have been willing to come to his brother's aid at no cost. Neither brother is very likable in this moment. Our final verse says, "Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left." So Esau despised his birthright. With Esau's sworn oath, Jacob delivers his part of this crazy deal. He gives his brother bread and a bowl of what turns out to be lentil stew. If two children made such a lopsided deal these days, it's likely a parent would step in and reverse the trade, giving each child a stern talking to. But the deal made between these two full-grown men will stand. The chapter ends with what appears to be an obvious statement. Esau despised his birthright. He didn't hold it with the value it was worth, and did not take care to protect it. The truth of the matter is that every time we choose material things over spiritual things, the temporal over the eternal or the earthly over the heavenly, we are showing disdain for the things of God. God chooses the younger twin. When God blesses his people, he has a specific plan for them. He blessed Esau and Jacob to become the fathers of two nations, Edom and Israel. Even though they were rivals, we still see that God had a specific plan for each of them in history. Ultimately, the house of Jacob will win out. The Messiah, a descendant of Jacob, will reign, and we are called to receive him. History is moving forward toward this final and glorious end. God chooses the younger twin. 1. Nothing is too great or too insignificant to take to God in prayer. Genesis 25:19-21. When in need of something, it is better to go straight to the source. Nothing is too great for his almighty power. Nothing is too small for his love. 2. When there are situations and circumstances in our lives that are puzzling and troubling, we should take them to the Lord. Genesis 25:22. God tells us to not worry, to pray, and he will give us peace like you can't imagine. 3. God doesn't have to use our methods and customs to accomplish his tasks, because his ways are not our ways. Genesis 25:23-24. He is infinite, we are finite. 4. Be careful, what seems insignificant to you may be significant to God. Genesis 25:25-26. The things we say and do, though they seem infinitely insignificant to us, may have eternal significance as God uses us. 5. Showing favoritism always leads to division. Genesis 25:27-28. It's best to treat everyone fairly and equally, because favoritism will decrease morale. 6. Taking advantage of others is always wrong. Genesis 25:29-31. Putting one over another create negativity, enemies, and unsettled feelings. 7. Never trivialize things of long-term importance. Genesis 25:31-34. God does not like us to treat his eternal plans and promises like they don't matter. We are truly glad you spent time to learn this lesson with us. We hope you are blessed and may share these with somebody else. Thank you very much, have a great week, and God bless you always, dear brothers and sisters.